our third topic for today, Jaxson Dart is now a New York Giant. Again, this is one of those things that over the last few weeks started to crystallize. The Giants have done a ton of work on quarterbacks over the course of the last couple of years. And as everybody was zeroed in on the work that they did on Shedeur Sanders this year, what people failed to realize was the Giants had done that work on a lot of quarterbacks. They had high-level executives get multiple exposures in the fall to at least 8 different quarterbacks, 5 guys in this year's draft. And Dart was one of them, of course. And then 3 guys who aren't even in the class right now. 3 guys who are draft eligible, but presumably will be in next year's draft class. In Penn State's Drew Aller, LSU's Garrett Nussmeier, and Miami's now Carson Beck was at Georgia last year. And so this is the culmination of a couple of years of work on all the quarterbacks. They weren't just looking at Shedeur Sanders, contrary to popular belief. And this is, I think, a bet that Brian Daboll is going to be able to get the most out of a player who is a good fit for what he wants to do offensively. You get Abdul Carter at 3, and then you come back into the first round and you get Jaxson Dart at the bottom of the first round and assure yourself of that. I'm not sure Cleveland would have taken him at the top of the second round. I think the Saints could have been lurking there as a potential team to come up and try to steal Jaxson Dart from the Giants. But there are some relationships that are important here. Brian Daboll got the chance to spend a lot of one-on-one time, be it over the phone, in person, over Zooms, with Jaxson Dart over the last couple of months. And they were able to build a strong relationship. And there are ties that bind here. Brian Daboll, one of his mentors in football was Charlie Weis, Jaxson Dart's offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, Charlie Weis Jr. And I can just tell you from having talked to Charlie Sr. over the last couple of months, he's a friend of mine, about this. He was over the moon high on Jaxson Dart. Another guy who was really high on Jaxson Dart within that Ole Miss program was Joe Judge. Not only is Joe Judge the ex-coach of the Giants, he and Daboll were also staff mates in New England from 2013 to 2016. So with this player, the Giants see a guy who they have certainty on. They know who he is. They're, I think, very well schooled on his ability to come into New York and handle everything. And I'm fascinated to see how this works. From a playing standpoint, one of the big questions NFL teams had was the offense he's coming from. Lane Kiffin has run an offense of the Baylor spread since he got to Ole Miss a few years back. My understanding of it is that over the last year, maybe a little over a year, they've started to incorporate back some of the West Coast concepts that Lane Kiffin ran earlier in his career because Jaxson Dart could handle it. There were also things that the coaches who evaluated him started to see, things like moving safeties with his eyes that really translate to the NFL level. And one interesting thing that I had heard about Jaxson when people were assessing him, and this was early in the process, but it was a simple way to put it. I was talking to a coach, this wasn't a coach of the Giants, who had looked at both guys in January and had gotten a good look at both guys and assessed them. And like he said, I'll make it easy for you. If you want to talk about what they're going to be as pros and how they translate to the pro game, it's like, all you got to know, when those guys are in trouble, when Jaxson Dart and Shedeur Sanders are in trouble, Jaxson Dart moves forward, Shedeur Sanders moves backward. What does that mean? Well, it means when the pocket closes down and the rush comes, Jaxson Dart starts climbing the pocket, eyes downfield. Shedeur also keeps his eyes downfield, but he had a tendency to bail out of the back of the pocket and get away with his feet. Would he be able to do that in the NFL? He doesn't have elite athleticism. Can he get away from the rush that way? I don't think many NFL teams saw that translating to the NFL game where he'd need to be rewired. Where with Jaxson Dart, you already had that built in. So I think Jaxson Dart, really good fit for the Giants. I like the pick at the bottom of the round, and I think a lot of the fit there has to do with Dart and his ties to the Giants organization through some of the guys that coached him at Ole Miss.